Hi, I'm Charles Westmoreland with the Columbia Tribune, and I'm here with Andrew Grabau. Andrew is the Executive Director for the Heart of Missouri United Way. Today, among a couple different subjects, we're going to discuss the impact of the federal tax reform legislation as it applies to nonprofits. Now, Andrew, the thinking is that if people have more money, in their bank accounts, they've got more money to spend, which would lead to more money to give to nonprofit organizations. But your information says that's not actually the case.
Well, first, Charles, thanks for having me on this morning again. So it's interesting, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 makes a major shift in what we typically use in filing our taxes, and that's called the standard deduction. So regardless of your filing status, the standard deduction rate goes up. And so what that means is that the necessity to claim different things, such as making charitable gifts, is affected. And so the incentive to make a charitable gift goes down. So while the goals of the tax reform are to provide additional funds to individuals, the incentive to give to charities is fundamentally changed under this reform and could have a significant impact on the amount of money that is donated to charities annually.
Now, prior to the legislation passing, is this something that individuals like yourself were aware of and advocating against, or did it catch you by surprise once everything was finalized?
No, we were aware of it, and in fact, just like when you watch sausage being made, it goes through different things. So when this legislation was first proposed, it did go through some different levels of, but we clearly saw before it was passed through Congress that this change in the standard deduction was going to take place, and that this concern about making gifts that could be tax deductible for roughly about 70% of Missourians would definitely have an impact. So we knew about it. In fact, I met with our local delegation, our congressional representatives. They were aware of it also. We had a good, productive conversation about it. And so now the law is in place, so now we're trying to be proactive and advocate for not only United Way, but for the whole nonprofit sector in making sure that the community is aware of this change.
So what's the solution to this?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, I should just back up and describe what it means. So this is more than just about not getting more money, right? I mean, money is just the item that we use for delivering impact. And so when we talk about reductions in charitable giving, what we're talking about is the reductions in the ability to help those in need. Mm-hmm. So from United Way standpoint, that's everything from affecting how much we support for, buddy packs, for example, from the food bank, or tutoring. We provided over 70,000 hours of tutoring last year. So when we're talking about fewer dollars, it's about fewer people getting the assistance they need. So what can nonprofits do? There's really three main things that United Way is advocating nonprofit organizations to do. The first one is to be proactive and to talk to your donors and to your stakeholders about this change. The more we can have that conversation and the more active we can be about it, the better, and perhaps we can minimize the effect. The second one is to also to talk to your major gift donors, so donors who perhaps will still itemize their taxes and will not be affected by this change in the standard deduction. You can talk about stop gifts, or if an individual has an IRA and they're over the age of 70 and a half, they have to take a mandatory distribution on that IRA, so talk to them about that. One of the changes in the tax law was the elimination of the estate tax. So perhaps for some of the more wealthy donors that you might have, that could come into play in talking about planned gifts or estate gifts as well. So that's the second thing that nonprofits can actively do. The third one that I highly encourage is to also just have a conversation with our elected officials. As I said, both Senators Blunt and McCaskill have been very responsive. Congresswoman Hartzler's office was very responsive also. And of course, the intent of this bill was not to hurt nonprofits, right? And so in seeing the unintended consequence that this could have, they are active in trying to come up with a solution. In fact, there's been two Republicans, one in the Senate, one in the House, that have both introduced legislation that would provide an unlimited charitable deduction for people who make gifts to nonprofit organizations. So I advocate to have those conversations with our elected officials. They are strong partners with us. They want a thriving nonprofit sector. So it's those three things that we're advocating.
Now, I'm going to have you provide a little bit of context to some of these numbers, but so people at home viewing understand. that the expected decrease in charitable contributions in Boone County is about 5%. Now, in Boone County in 2015, there were $133,330,000 in charitable contributions, and that's not including contributions claimed by Boone County tax filers, or that's not all the charitable contributions. So a 5% deduction could be as much as $6.6 million less going to charitable organizations. Now, when we think about how to cut almost $7 million in charitable giving, food, clothing for the needy, services for youth. What kinds of services would be directly impacted by this? Just so folks that are listening in understand what's at stake.
So, first of all, a couple of things that are important. Boone County is an incredibly generous community. When you share those numbers, $133 million in 2015 was claimed as charitable contributions by Boone County taxpayers. So that means that's to any nonprofit organization throughout the United States. But locally, if we look at a 5% loss, for United Way, that's around $150,000. So we've already talked about what that could mean. For this year, for 2018, it absolutely will not affect our cuts because of the success that we had with last year's fundraising efforts and with plans that are already in place. Our hope is by being active and proactive right now, we can make sure to address those needs by pursuing different revenue sources, right, to try to minimize that loss. But you're exactly right. I mean, there are going to be tough decisions that have to be made. And despite the cuts, one thing that organizations need to look at, the nonprofit sector is, in my opinion, the strongest when it comes to financial accountability and monitoring administrative costs and being mindful of overhead, right? But the nonprofit community, that's probably the first area where we'll have to try to look. Is there a way to try to maybe address that a little bit more? But you run that risk. If you cut too much, then it affects your capacity and your ability to efficiently deliver services. So it's going to be a tricky balance, that's for sure.
Well, and it's I think, fairly consistent to say that most nonprofit organizations, local nonprofit organizations, are already running with shoestring staffs,
right.
heavily reliant on volunteers. So when you look at where you cut, there's not a lot of efficiency left there because what's being cut are the services, the money, the donations that are being provided outward.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. We have, United Way supports financially 32 agencies in Boone, Cooper, and Howard County, and we have some one-person shops. Right? Mm-hmm. They wear the hat for everything in their office, and they're incredibly efficient and dedicated. And then we have some nonprofits that run lean budgets but have scaled operations that are significantly larger, so their size of the staff is a little larger, and they run nimble budgets too. So there are going to be some difficult conversations if this takes place. But I'm saying right now that the message we want to deliver is that we have to be proactive as a sector, and we have to recognize this oncoming challenge, and we can look at ways to possibly address it. But it's important for the public to realize that one of the unintended consequences could be a decrease in revenue for nonprofits.
So what would be, for those who are watching this right now, what is your call to action for them? What would you like them to do when they're done watching this video?
Sure. So first and foremost, like I said, this is an incredibly generous community. So continue to support that organization regardless of the charitable deduction. And know that organizations in Boone County and in Cooper, throughout the whole Midwest, they're very mindful of how precious the treasure that we receive is. And so your gift is maximized. It is not wasted. So giving to an organization still, regardless of maybe that tax deduction, is incredibly important for that organization. So continue giving. Advocacy is always an important piece too. So share this news with your elected officials as well, because they are partners with us. Mm-hmm. And so we want to make sure that we work together and make sure that we can continue to address these challenges for us. And then last but not least, all I can say is talk to other folks who might be confused, because the taxes are confusing, right? They're incredibly confusing, and personally speaking, they can be confusing for your own personal taxes. But try to learn more, and you can always contact I know there are different places that you can reach out to that can help. Your accountant perhaps can help in explaining things a little bit more thoroughly. So this is something that I think we can all as a community address, but just continue to support your nonprofit organization regardless of the changes, I think is really important.
Well, I look forward to checking with you in a few months and kind of see how this issue is evolving.
I would like that very much.
And
yes.
on behalf of the Tribune, we'll keep our eyes open and do a little bit more digging into how this is having an impact.
Wonderful.
On the community.
Okay, thank you, Charles.
So,
Appreciate it.
any final thoughts?
No, I think that it is really important, like I said, to just be aware of this issue and to be mindful of the need for support in our community to help those who need a helping hand.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Andrew.
Thanks again. Appreciate it, as always.
Thank you. And you can read more at ColumbiaTribune.com. Be sure to like our Facebook page for more videos and opportunities for us to meet folks like Andrew on Facebook Live to discuss issues impacting Columbia and Boone County. Thank you for watching.